So classification of the diuretic drugs. We have different classes, that is osmotic diuretics. Example for osmotic diuretics, we have mannitol, sorbitol, and so on. The structures or chemical structures of these compounds are as you can see in the slide. So this is mannitol, and this is the sorbitol, and this is isosorbate dinitrate, isosorbate. And second class is carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. Examples are astazolamide and midazolamide. So this is the structure of astazolamide, and this is the structure of midazolamide. So midazolamide and astazolamide. Then the other category, that is benzothiazide or thiazide diuretics. You have the examples chlorothiazide and hydrochlorothiazide. So this is chlorothiazide, and the other compound, this is the hydrochlorothiazide. Okay. Then the other class are quinazolone derivatives, that is quinatazone. This is the structure of quinatazone, and metalazone. So this is the metalazone. Then thalidomide derivatives, chlorthalidone. This is the only drug in the class. Then high ceiling or loop diuretics, you have furosemide and ethacrynic acid as the examples. Then coming to the next class, that is potassium sparing diuretics. In this we have the three categories, that is anti-hormonal diuretics, or they are also called as mineralocorticoid receptor antagonists. So the example category of drug is spironolactone. Then pteridines, in this pteridine class you have triamterene, and whereas aminopyrazines you have the amiloride as an example. This is the classification. And now if you come to the osmotic diuretics, so what are the characteristic features of osmotic diuretics and how do they act? So the osmotic diuretics are low molecular weight substances, and limited reabsorption of the Na plus and water takes place, and they cause hypertonic, that is hypertonic solution is, or hypertonicity is induced in the body, and thereby they have the diuretic activity. So low molecular weight, because of low molecular weight, they are freely filtered through the Bowman's capsule into the renal tubules, and once they are in the renal tubules, they are non-reabsorbable solutes and are not extensively metabolized. They are also not, they do not undergo any metabolism. Then because of their high water solubility, so limited reabsorption. So limited reabsorption of water takes place because most of the water is associated with this type of, that is osmotic diuretic agents. Then increase intraluminal osmotic pressure, causing the water to pass from the body into the tubule. So automatically there is osmotic pressure developed between the tubule and the body, and thereby water is excreted into the tubule. Then since the osmotic agent and the associated water are not reabsorbed from the nephron, they are eliminated in the form of urine. So osmotic diuretics increases the volume of urine and the excretion of water, almost all of the electrolyte. Along with that, we also that is, these osmotic diuretics also lead to the loss of the electrolytes also. Then coming to the next part, applications of osmotic diuretics. So these are used in the prophylaxis of acute renal failure, in which these drugs inhibit the water reabsorption and maintain urine flow. Used in diminished urine flow because of severe bleeding or traumatic surgical experiences. Then the third use is it is used to acutely reduce increased intracranial or intraocular pressure. They are not used in treating ordinary edemas because osmotic diuretics can expand intracellular fluid volume. So this is where you should not use them. That is ordinary edemas. We should not treat ordinary edemas with using the osmotic diuretics, and should not be given to patients who are unresponsive or have cranial bleeding. So these are the effects. These are the uses of osmotic or applications of osmotic diuretics. Coming to the next part, that is carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So the mechanism of action already we have seen. Uh, Carbonic anhydrase inhibitors induce diuresis by inhibiting the formation of carbonic acid within proximal and distal tubular cells to limit the number of hydrogen ions available to promote sodium reabsorption. So if H plus ions are generated only, then reabsorption of sodium ions takes place. That is excretion of sodium ions into the lumen and reabsorption of sodium ions is possible. But whenever there are no H plus ions produced, then there is no chance of reabsorption of sodium ions. For diuretic response to be observed, more than 99% of the carbonic anhydrase enzyme must be inhibited. So although carbonic anhydrase activity in the proximal tubule regulates the reabsorption of approximately 20 to 25% of the filter load of sodium ions, the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors are not as efficacious, are not highly efficacious diuretics. So an increased excretion of only 2 to 5% of the filter load of sodium is seen with carbonic anhydrase inhibitors because of the increased reabsorption of the ions by the ascending loop of Henle and more distal nephron segments. So even the other site 2, site 3 and site 4 are also responsible for reabsorption process. So site 1 is not a most efficient, it is not a most efficient method of preventing the reabsorption of sodium ions. It's only 20 to 25%. And therapeutic applications of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. So they are used to make the urine alkaline and acidic blood. So because H plus ions are not excreted into the lumen, that's why the urine becomes alkaline. And because the ions which are being, that is the H plus ions are, that is the carbonic acid which is found in the body is left over in the body, thereby H plus and HCO3 ions are generated. So the blood becomes acidic. So any condition in which you need to make the urine alkaline or make the blood acidic, then you can use these drugs. So when acidosis occurs, carbonic anhydrase inhibitors lose their effectiveness as diuretics and become inactive unless body regains acid-base balance. So if the acidosis occurs, that is systemic acidosis occurs, then these these carbonic anhydrase inhibitors, they lose their capacity to act as diuretic agents. And once the acid-base balance is back, then they can work. Most commonly used in the treatment of glaucoma, in which they reduce the rate of aqueous humor formation and reduce the intraocular pressure. So limited use to alkaline the urine, then prophylactically to reduce mountain sickness, and in epilepsy as an adjuvant in the treatment of edema due to the congestive heart failure and drug-induced edema. So this is the application of the carbonic anhydrase inhibitors. The examples of carbonic anhydrase inhibitors are acetazolamide. So it is an orally effective diuretic agent, can cause systemic acidosis, then treatment of glaucoma, and its dose is 250 mg to 1 gram per day, which is used in the case of glaucoma. So this is the structure of acetazolamide. Then midazolamide. So the midazolamide, the difference between structural difference between acetazolamide and midazolamide. So this is MCQ question or GPAT question. You can see there is methyl group attached to the nitrogen here, but here the nitrogen is there is, you have no methyl groups on these nitrogens. So that's why methazolamide, acetazolamide, methazolamide. So methazolamide is a derivative of acetazolamide in which one of the active hydrogens has been replaced by a methyl group. So that is what this methyl group. Then this decreases polarity and permits increased penetration into intraocular fluid reducing the intraocular pressure. So the penetration power of metazolamide is greater than acetazolamide, and thereby it will have more activity to reduce the intraocular pressure. And if you look into the dose of the metazolamide, it is 50 to 100 mg 2 to 3 times a day, whereas your acetazolamide is 250 mg. So because the penetration power is more, this there has been a dose reduction when compared to the acetazolamide. Then the other examples in this category are ethoxyzolamide, then dichlorofenamide, okay, or disulfonamide derivative. These are the other drugs. Then coming to the other class, benzothiazide and thiazide diuretics. So mainly mechanism action of these compounds is inhibition of Na plus Cl minus symporter located in the distal convoluted tubule. So these are actively secreted in the proximal tubule and are carried to the loop of Henle and to the distal tubule. Major site of action of these compounds is in the distal tubule, where these drugs compete to the chloride binding site of Na plus Cl minus symporter and inhibit the reabsorption of sodium and chloride ions. So when there is no reabsorption, then they are eliminated from the body, and we all know that sodium is always associated with water molecules, so diuresis is seen. And these compounds are commonly called as, that is benzothiazide or thiazide diuretics are commonly called as soluretics because they prevent NaCl, that is sodium chloride, salt, SALT, uretics. Okay, that's why they have the name soluretics, because they prevent the reabsorption of Na plus and Cl minus or sodium chloride, which is that's why these agents are called as soluretics. They also inhibit the reabsorption of potassium and bicarbonate ions, but to a lesser degree. Then moving to the examples of this class, we will see. But before that, let us see the SAR of thiazide diuretics. So thiazide diuretics are weakly acidic with a benzothiazidine 1,1 dioxide nucleus. So this is the nucleus of basic nucleus of the thiazide and thiazide like diuretic agents. So chlorothiazide is the simplest member of this class. Then pK of this chlorothiazide is 6.5 and 9.5 because we have the two places at which we have the ionization can occur. That's why this compound has got two big pKa values. The hydrogen atom at, so we can see here at 2n is the most acidic because this is most acidic. Okay, because of the electron withdrawing effects of neighboring sulfone group. So because these sulfone group is able to electron withdrawing nature, then the hydrogen is easily available for its elimination. So that's why this 2n hydrogen is more acidic in nature. The sulfonamide group that is substituted at 7. So if you look into this structure here, it is the sulfonamide moiety which is being substituted at C7. Now provides an additional point of acidity. So this is the second region where the hydrogen can be eliminated, or H plus ion can be given out. So this is the second pKa value. This is for 9.5 and pKa value of this is 6.7. So please remember, this is a question that can be asked in your GPAT exam. So what is the pKa value of chlorothiazide, and what is the pKa value responsible for value of 9.5 or 6.7? Then these acidic protons make possible for the formation of water-soluble sodium salt that can be used for intravenous administration of the diuretics. So when they react with the sodium hydroxide, they form the salt, sodium salt of chlorothiazide. And because of the formation of salt form, it is more water-soluble, and that's why it can be given as IV form. So this also you have to remember. The formation of sodium salt of chlorothiazide, it makes this chlorothiazide to be given as a IV because of the possibility of more water solubility. Then an electron withdrawing group is necessary at position 6 for the diuretic activity. So we had electron withdrawing group at 6. We will see the compounds example when we see the example. And the little diuretic activity is seen with a hydrogen atom at point 6 at position 6, whereas compounds with a chloride or a trifluoromethyl substitution are highly active. So because they increase the penetration, that is lipophilicity is increased because of the presence of trifluoro or chloromethyl. Okay, so what are the substitutions that you can make on C6 is they must be a highly lipophilic substances like chloride or trifluoromethyl, which are more highly active in that C6 position. The trifluoromethyl substituted diuretics are more lipid soluble and have longer duration of action than their chloro substituted analogs. When electron releasing groups such as methyl, methoxy are placed at C6, the diuretic activity is markedly decreased. So only chloro or trifluoromethyl substitution can be done at C6. Replacement or removal of sulfonamide group at position 7 yields compounds with little or no diuretic activity. So sulfonamide moiety is important at C7. If there is no sulfonamide moiety, there is drastic change in the diuretic activity or there is no diuretic activity at all. Saturation of the double bond to give 3,4 dihydroderivative produces a diuretic that is tenfold more active than the unsaturated one. So saturation at 3,4 is desirable. Substitution with a lipophilic group at position 3 gives a marked increase in diuretic activity. So this also is increasing the lipophilic character. So those compounds are those substitutions which increases the lipophilic nature of the drug will lead to higher diuretic activity. Haloalkyl, ara-alkyl or thioether substitution increases the lipid solubility of the molecule and yields compounds with longer duration of action. Coming to the next substitution, the alkyl substitution on the 2n position also decreases the polarity and increases the duration of action. So the therapeutic applications of thiazide diuretics are they are used in the treatment of edema caused by the cardiac decompensation as well as in the hepatic or renal disease. Second application, also commonly used in the treatment of hypertension. Their effect may be due to the reduction in blood volume and direct relaxation of vascular smooth muscle. Then hypersensitivity reactions or adverse effects of these thiazide or chlorothiazide drugs are mainly hypersensitivity. So the hypersensitivity is due to the sulfonamide moiety which is present. Okay, whenever we come across sulfonamide moiety is the one which is causing this hypersensitivity. So because this chlorothiazide, that is seventh position is substituted with SO2NH2. Okay, that's why this position or this substitution is responsible for hypersensitivity. Then other adverse effects are gastric irritation, nausea, electrolyte imbalance such as hyponatremia, hypoalkalemia, hypomagnesemia. That means reduced concentrations of potassium. Hypokalemia is potassium, and reduced concentrations of magnesium is hypomagnesemia. Then hypochloremic alkalosis, that is reduction of chloride ions. Then hypercalcemia, that is retention of calcium ions. And hyperuricemia, that is higher uric acid concentrations. So these are the adverse effects of chlorothiazide, one of the adverse effects. And potassium and magnesium supplements may be administered to treat the hypokalemic and hypomagnesemia. So because there are reduced concentration of potassium and magnesium, you can give magnesium and potassium supplements. So in the regular papers, they may ask you why is potassium and there is potassium and magnesium things must be given. So this is the adverse effects of thiazide and hydrothiazide like drugs. Then coming to the high ceiling or loop diuretics, the mechanism is that is mechanism. These diuretics produce a peak diuresis much greater than that of observed with the other commonly used diuretics, hence the name high ceiling diuretics. And they are also called as loop diuretics because they are acting at the ascending, that is loop of Henle. So that's why they have got the, that is they are acting at the loop. That's why they are called as the loop diuretics, and they are also called as high ceiling diuretics because they have got the much higher diuretic activity when compared to other categories of drugs. So main site of action is they act on the luminal Na plus K plus Cl minus importers. They inhibit the this particular importer and thereby reduce the reabsorption of sodium. Additional effects of proximal and distal tubules are also possible. And high ceiling diuretics are characterized by quick onset and short duration of activity. So this is the advantage of the high ceiling diuretics. Examples of high ceiling diuretics are furosemide, azoximide, bumetanide, pyritinide, furosemide, then ethacrynic acid and etazoline. These are the examples of high ceiling diuretics. Then the loop diuretics act on the Na plus K plus Cl minus importer, or which is also called as co-transport system, ascending limb of loop of Henle, and competing for the chloride ion binding site. And because magnesium and calcium reabsorption in this thick ascending loop of Henle is dependent on sodium and chloride concentrations, recycling of potassium due to the lack of electropositive gradient generation, uh, loop diuretics also enable their reabsorption. So they are being exclusively excreted in the urine. So they cause depletion of the potassium ions. Then without the such concentrated medulla, water cannot be, that is water has less of an osmotic driving force to leave the collecting duct, ultimately resulting in the diuresis. Okay. Then SAR of furosemide and related drugs. So furosemide is an example of high ceiling diuretic and may be regarded as a derivative of anthralinic acid or orthoaminobenzoic acid. So please note this particular point. So furosemide is a anthralinic acid derivative that can be asked for 1 mark question. Then 5-sulfonyl anthralinic acid uh, showed effective diuresis. So this was the first compound to have shown the diuretic activity. The chloride and sulfonamide substitutions are features also seen in thiazide diuretics because the molecule possesses a free carboxylic group. Furosemide is a stronger acid than the thiazide diuretics. So there, the pKa value of that particular compound was around 9.5 and 6 and 9.5, but the pK value of this compound is around 3.9. Then SCR of the bumetanide type of drugs, a phenoxy group has replaced the customary chloro or trifluoro substitution seen in other diuretic molecules. So this is the phenoxy molecule, which is a unique to this bumetanide and which is not there in other class of drugs. The amine group customarily seen at 5th position has been shifted to the position at 6 has been removed to the 5th position. So this is the 5th position. In most of the cases, it is in the 6th position. It is similar to furosemide, but with a marked increase in the diuretic potency. So bumetanide is 50 times more potent than the furosemide. Replacement of the phenoxy